All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Raising Up Sons, where we're trying to be better dads so our sons can be better men. And I'm going to apologize right off the bat. I've got some stuffiness going on, something springing in the air. I don't know, Taylor, but got it all going on my throat. I actually feel fine, all right, but it's just a little bit of head stuff. So if it sounds nasally in the microphone, that's because I'm nasally.
Hey, same here, man. I've been coughing like for a week straight, and I don't know what it's from, but I know there's a lot of sore throats, congestion going on. But I'm just hoping it
Ugh,
makes my voice sound deeper
a
and
little more
more
masculine, a little
manly.
tougher.
Yeah, more
I love
manly.
it.
I
Well,
like that.
for all of you out there, hopefully you are feeling great and healthy. And speaking of which, we're talking today about how we can show healthy love to our kids. That's really what this whole thing is about, right? Like as a parent, it's like how to love your kids well and how to do it in a healthy way. And so we're going to spend some time today just kind of talking about what that is, like what makes a kid feel loved, what makes them know the way that you feel about them, and just how important it is that we're doing that, communicating it well, because feelings, whether we know it or not, don't communicate themselves. People don't just know what's going on inside of you or inside your mind, and so we've got to find ways to express that. And sometimes we're not as good at it as maybe we think we are, right, Taylor?
Yeah, and so you always got to think about how did you receive love growing up. I mean, this is gonna start off right off the bat with like a counseling session. I feel like it's gonna be
It all
like,
goes back to the parents.
how were you loved by your dad when like do you remember growing up, like was he spending quality time with you, was he buying you gifts, hanging out, showing you how to be a man? What did it look like, receiving love from your father, old Pap?
That's right, man. Well, we joke like this being like counseling, but like in a sense, this is like the building block for everything. It's not that like, if your dad was absent or, did not do a great job at this or never said the words "I love you," it doesn't mean that you can never grow from that. But that is sort of the baseline that you start at. Like we all learn from our parents and what's modeled for us, and so very fortunate, as we kind of said throughout this. My dad was great and was super present and always there. He was the type of dad that never missed a game and showed up to every competition or whatever was going on. He was just there for it, and in that way, I mean, always, told me he loved me every day. I can remember going on car rides and just talking and chattering and doing all the things. I think those were, ways that my dad communicated and showed me that he loved me, was just by being there. I mean, we've said it before, the famous quote that kids, to kids, love is spelled Time. And
Hmm.
I think that's one of the primary things that my dad did is he always spent time with me. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a very similar thing. I remember growing up, we had a basketball hoop in our backyard. He was always outside shooting hoops with me, showing me different, post moves and things like that. And I still remember growing up, I think it was like maybe seventh grade, sixth grade, somewhere in there, maybe eighth grade. I know it was middle school when I beat my dad finally in one on one. So we were just playing all the time, spending time together. I loved going to Reds games with him. He'd buy me, Reds hats and things like that. And so just yeah, it was just a great, fond memories. Him always giving me hugs, telling me he loves me, all those things. So yeah. So very fortunate to grow up with a dad like that.
hmm Um, yeah, so I wanted to, bounce a couple of scriptures here that I think are really relevant to kind of what we're talking about today. The first one's in Ephesians chapter 6, it's verse 1 through 4, and it says this. It says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment, and that comes with a promise, so that it may go well with you and you may enjoy a long life on the earth." So, obey your parents, live a long time. That's the first part. And then right after that, huge promises made. He says, "And fathers specifically, do not exasperate your children or make them angry for no good reason or beyond like what's reasonable. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." So I think it's interesting that those two things are tied together. Like first, you want kids, like you should listen to your mom and dad because sometimes they know what they're talking about.
Hmm.
But in order for them to listen, like dads pay attention, in order for them to listen and for them to have a life that goes really well, for them to be filled up and, purposeful and all those things, do not exasperate your children.
Hmm.
Instead, love them well, which doesn't just mean like, taking them to ball games and all the fun stuff. Like sometimes that does mean discipline. Like that's
Hmm.
not exasperating them, right? Discipline is structure. It shows that you care, which is, um, exactly what we're called to do, and we're gonna talk more about that in a minute. But I think those two things are tied, right? Like, don't exasperate them. Love your children well, so that they will be able to listen to you and learn from you and know that they're loved, right?
Yeah, that's a great one, loving your father just like that, loving your kids. And then this next one is 1 Corinthians 11:1. This one's my favorite when it comes to actually showing your kids how to do things, how to love others, how to follow Jesus. It's 1 Corinthians 11:1. It says, "Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ." And so that means you're just following Jesus and you're bringing your kids along for the ride. And so, whatever that looks like, serving others, helping others, spending time with people, all those things in order to show your kids how to love other people. And so, then that brings us to the ultimate example that we want to point our kids to, which is Jesus. And so, everything we do, we want to point our boys to Jesus. We want to point our kids to Jesus. We want to show them, Jesus is the ultimate hero. He's the one who made the greatest sacrifice. He took action. He's spending time with people, loving people, and he's ultimately, the greatest source of love. And so that's the whole backbone to this whole thing that we're doing today.
And for them to learn, right, that as much as I love you and try to love you well, Jesus loves you even more and like even better. Like his love is even
Perfectly, yeah.
greater than ours. And so, yeah, it's such a good reminder. And it reminds me, just a couple weeks ago, we had a guy come in. He was doing our all staff. His name's Larry Osborne. He's written a few books. You may have heard of him, but really, really smart, just like brilliant thinker. And he just kind of mentioned in one of his talks this challenge that at their church they kind of lay out to dads. And man, it just like really stuck with me. He said, and we kind of challenge them and ourselves that like we want to strive to be the kind of fathers that can pray every night. Dear God, please help this little boy to grow up to be just like me. And when you read that verse of Paul talking about follow my examples, I follow Christ, it
Yeah.
reminded me of that, of like, man, like just like you can immediately feel it, right? Like, dear God, please help this little boy grow up to be like me. And there's this pressure of like, do I want him to be just like me? Do I want that? And obviously, like, we're not perfect. And there's things that I hope that he does better than me. Hope he can be a better man. It's like our whole, motto on here. But man, that's what I want to strive for is
Yep.
that I want to follow Christ in such a way that I could pray. Dear God, please help this little boy grow up to be just like me. Really, it's really grow up to be just like Jesus. Like that's the
Right.
goal. That's what I want. And so, yeah, it really stuck with me when you said that verse. But so as we talk about that and what that looks like to be able to pray that prayer for them to grow up to love and to be like Jesus, there's a few things that we've kind of jotted down that just kind of help us communicate that we love our kids. And the first one is that they can't just hear you say "I love you." They have to have it modeled.
Hmm. Yeah, and so I think even though it can't just be that, it has to have action. We have to say it all the time, I think,
Mhm.
and but it can't just be words. Words just aren't enough. And so I think for me, when I'm with my boys, like they probably get tired of me telling them I love them, and I'm proud of them and all those things. And so I try not to do it in embarrassing moments, around their friends because they are middle school boys now, but every now and then I'll still get it from them when they are with their boys or when they're with their friends. So what about you and your
Yeah,
boys?
man. Dude, I love that. I love like we say it all the time. Like you don't leave or go anywhere or even leave the room without saying like "love you, buddy" or "good night, I love you," but like all the time, like you're communicating that because I don't think you can say it too much. I don't think they can hear it too much. And what they may not even realize, I'm sure they don't realize, even as they get older and they get embarrassed sometimes, is that one or two things is true. Either their friends hear that and it's totally normal because they hear it from their parents too,
Hmm.
or the second one is their friends hear that and it is weird and they wish they heard it all the time from their parents
That's
too.
good.
Like one of those two things. And so I want it to be normalized for my boys that it's just like, man, it rolls off the tongue and it's said because, it's getting more and more, I think, that men, especially like, are getting better at it's okay to say that and it's not embarrassing or weird. But man, just a generation or two generations ago, that was like a big deal. Like I talked to guys at church that are, I mean, like my age that never heard their dad say the words "I love you."
Yep.
Like, it's not. He's like, I mean, he was present, he was there, like he worked hard for the family. It was just he wasn't raised that way. He didn't say things like that. And it's still, I mean, he carries that. As a 40-something-year-old man, he's like, yeah, I've never heard my dad say those words. And so,
Hmm.
I think it's super important that we say it. But again, it can't just be words.
Right.
Words only go so deep. They're important, but they only mean as much as your actions back on.
Yep. And
And
so
so,
here's
yeah,
let me ask you this real quick about saying I love you. Have you heard I think I remember this from King of Queens where there was an episode where they're like, "Hey, let's not say I love you when we hang up. Let's just say bye." Like, do you think that there is a time where you say I love you too much and it doesn't have the same effect?
no, I don't,
I
man.
don't either.
No, I
Yeah.
don't think so. I think no, I think you're just ingraining that in and it's a constant reminder and yeah, I think it's just communication's so important, right? And we're gonna talk more about that as we get down here with those words of affirmation. But no, because
Yep.
I don't want them to ever doubt it. Like I don't
Yep.
want them to
I'm
ever
in
question it.
agreement.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and so like we said, you want to back it up with not just the words, but back it up with the way that you live. And I think one of the things we both mentioned when it comes to our dads, and one of the most important things is quality time, right? And
Yeah, and
not
so
just
I was gonna say, yeah, so quality time versus quality time. And so one of the things that we were talking about, LG, was from that book, Intentional Fatherhood by John Tyson. It's like,
gold.
what kind of adventure can you create? And so let's just make the most extreme answer. And so, he used the example of if my kid wants a Philly cheesesteak, I'm not going to take him to a local, cheesesteak factory. I'm going to take him all the way to Philadelphia and we're going to have a legit original Philly cheesesteak.
Love that story. It's so cool.
So,
And
have you ever
you
done
did
anything like oh, yeah.
you've done
Yes.
something like this, right?
Yeah, so, I got the idea from this where, Jack's favorite food is mac and cheese, and so we looked up the best mac and cheese restaurants. We went to about 3 or 4 of them, and, we just made, like, a whole 2 weeks of it, and we found the
Mac and
best
cheese
ones.
bracket.
That's right. Turns out Jack didn't like any of them. Jack's favorite mac and cheese is legitimately, um, what is
This
it?
old box like Kraft
Kraft
mac and
mac and
cheese.
cheese, but it's the microwavable one. That's
Man,
what he's eating right now.
dude, that could not be more true though. Like Ethan, my oldest, like he loves mac and cheese, and same thing. Like he'll eat it at other restaurants, but you ask him like his very favorite mac and cheese if he could have any, it's always the cheapest, like with the cheese that's half plastic that you put in the microwave, like the stuff that everyone's telling you not to put in your
Oh,
kid's
yeah.
body. Like I'm sure it's terrible for him. That's his favorite. Like that's what he wants to eat.
Yep.
Mm,
And it
that's
is
funny though.
good, man. You can't deny it.
Good old Kraft mac and cheese. We're looking for a sponsor if you're out there.
Oh.
But I love that. It's doing the like you're making a memory out of it, right? So you turn a question into an adventure. Like you turn an interest into like a core memory, like that he'll never forget. And it's like you can't do that with everything, right? But man, when you can find the opportunity to like create a moment, that's super special. And I love that. That's quality time, not just quantity. And
Mhm.
that's super important. So, we talk all the time about like kids spell love, Time. But listen, that's not like logging hours in the same room on your phone. It's not just, hanging out watching a TV show together. Like, not that that's terrible or watching a ball game. Like, those can be great memories with your dad, but it's quality of like, what are you doing together? What's the activity? What's intentional about it? Like, those sort of things that build memories, not just punching a time card, right?
Mhm.
So it's making sure that it's quality time, not just a large quantity of time.
Yeah,
The
the
second
mac
one,
and cheese restaurant, we did that probably a year and a half ago, and he's still talking about it. So it was a great memory.
that is a great memory. I love that. I'm gonna steal that as a matter of fact.
You should.
The next one we talked about was just encouragement. We talked about communicating like the, I love you and saying that and verbalizing it. But more than just saying I love you, like all of your words matter. And so the way that you say I love you is sometimes in like the way you encourage certain behaviors, the way you encourage like things they do or things about them that are true. All those things can be encouraging. Like, man, I just love like the person God made you. I love how funny you are. I love how creative you are. I love the mind that God gave you. I love the way that you, care about other people. What a good friend you are. Like all these things are like you're encouraging the person that God made them to be, and that is to me, one of the most important things that we can do. And so, what are some other ways like how we can encourage our kids?
Yeah, and I think too with, the first thing for my kids that comes to mind is encouraging them with sports. And I think with that, it's just encouraging their effort
Mhm.
because I'm telling Jack, I'm telling Eli, I don't care Coach doesn't care if, the ball's not going in every time as long as you're hustling, things like that. But the problem can get to where, parents get so involved in their kids' sports that if a kid isn't playing or if your kid isn't starting or something like that, then there is such a thing as falsely encouraging them. And that's where it's like, man, you should be the starter. You're the best one on the team. You should be doing these things. Instead, what they should be doing, what we should be doing is saying, you're not the starter. All right. So what's it going to take to get there? You need to ask your coach what you need to be working on, and you need to be doing it on your own. And then encouraging them to do that effort and take ownership of that.
I love that, man. I
So,
think because it's only helpful to encourage things that are true. And so,
hmm
like, we tell kids all the time, like, you can be anything you want to be when you grow up. And that's just not true.
yeah.
Not every kid can be whatever they want to be. Like, you can't necessarily grow up to be an NBA player. Taylor's kids might be able to grow up to be an NBA player because
No.
they're going to be like 7 foot tall. But my kids can't, and like there's certain things that just like aren't true. And so I don't want to discourage them. Like, you don't have to be the best basketball player in the world to play basketball. Like, you can still do that and love that. And we can encourage what you love about the sport. But you don't want to falsely encourage to like convince them that something's true that isn't necessarily true and that isn't important. That's the other thing. So encouraging things that are true, you can't overdo it. Encouraging things that aren't true, that can be damaging and cause discouragement down the road. And so it's important to kind of differentiate between those two things.
Yep.
What's the next one we got, Taylor?
Next one is consistency. And so that's just showing up. That's one of those things that we've talked about before where it's like you don't have to be the perfect dad, but you got to be the present dad. You got to be consistent. That's showing up when times are tough, when times are messy. You're showing up. I mean, you might not be able to make all their games or their events or plays or whatever it is, but man, you should be making as many as you possibly can. If there's, not a giant excuse, and when you're with your kids, you're putting your phone down, you're leading out, intentionally praying, because you want to build a trust with your kids, and the only way that you can build trust with your kids is if you show up with your kids, if you're consistent with them, and
As being
so
consistent,
consistency build trust.
yeah, consistent with your time, like you're saying there,
Hmm
and also I think just being consistent in like your reaction, being consistent in like dad doesn't blow up and get super angry or lose it on certain things, like keeping your cool, being steady. The Bible calls gentleness one of the fruits of the spirit, and I think kids, they starve for that. So having that consistency in character,
Yeah.
super important. Consistency in your rules that like when you say we do this or we don't do this, be consistent. Like don't flip flop and go back and forth or not follow through on something. When you say you're going to do it, for better or worse, like you do it and you keep your word. Like you don't lie because again, right? Honesty builds trust. Lies destroy relationships. And being fair when it comes to rules. I think this is an important one. Like we, have talked about this, me and Matt, as our boys get older, of like, we don't want them to have phones or electronics and stuff in their room. It's like, well, then the only fair thing is like, if we're gonna be consistent, then we can't have those things in our room either. Because that communicates like we're all in this together, same rules, what's good for you, what's good for me, like it's the same. And I think that's a big part of just communicating like that I love you, I care about you enough that
hmm
like we're all going to play by the same rules, and so that's all a part of being consistent.
Yep. We've done that. We've kind of got lax with it a little bit, but Allison has her phone just in case of an emergency, but my phone is with my boys on the kitchen counter. Um, but I do have a funny story about consistency. I don't know if it's a good story or a bad story, but I remember it is with consistency. So I remember Eli right before he went to bed. He was making some snarky remark, something like that, and it got me mad. So I got upset with him, and then he just went on down to bed. And then he was laying in bed smiling when I walked in there because he said, "Dad, I knew you'd come in here and apologize and tell me you love me." I was like, "That's right. That's
It's
probably not
consistent.
good
He
that I do
knows.
it so many times."
He knew you were coming. I love that, man. Not ending on a bad note or like yeah, I love that. One of the other things we do, like speaking of being fair and like staying consistent, is apologizing. You think of like what's fair. Like if they do it, we have to do it. And so I think all the time, like man, we make our boys apologize every time they say something like that. They get snarky or and you have to go say you're sorry. You got to give a hug. Like you got to, make this right. And I think it's important, like, to be consistent that like parents have to do that too. That when I, say something I shouldn't have said, when I get snarky or sarcastic, that I need to go and say, hey, dad shouldn't have done that. Dad doesn't always get it right. And, even like the verse we read in the beginning about like fathers don't stir up your kids to anger.
Yeah.
I was going through and making a journaling Bible for the boys. And then that one I had to highlight and I just said, hey, I apologize if dad hasn't always done this well. Forgive me. Dad's not always perfect, but know that I love you. And just had to kind of own it even there. But I think it's important that we model apologizing and just like when you make a mistake or when you do something wrong, like we apologize because this isn't ultimately about being perfect. Like none of this, it's
Hmm.
not behavior based. None of faith is behavior based. It's about relationship. And
Yeah.
man, we don't have to be perfect. We have to apologize and do whatever it takes to preserve and keep that relationship healthy. And it helps them see it that if they have to do it, we have to do it too. And we show them how to apologize.
Yep. And the next one we got priorities. And so, these are just some practical ways that we're showing love to our kids. But we got to stay consistent in our priorities. It's God, family, and then work and hobbies. Things like that. And so we were talking a little bit about fantasy football. I suck at fantasy football. LG, doesn't sound like you're much better, are you?
No, man. I've been playing fantasy football for years, and I'm going to admit something that on a podcast that's predominantly probably men listening. I know we got some females out there as well, but I just want to admit to everyone, I don't actually like fantasy football. Like, I don't enjoy it that much. I've been in a couple leagues going back years, and I love the people I'm in those leagues with. But man, the like weekly keeping up with lineups and trades, and this guy's hurt, and like trying to find more points out of a kicker and special teams, like I get so exhausted with it that I usually can't wait for the season to be over. And so, just on a side, like little mini rant there about fantasy football, but I kind of despise it.
I'm with you. I joined a league. I've set my roster once and didn't even look at it again, and I actually won a game.
Hey, there you
So,
go. All that said, I am 1-0 this fantasy football season. Still interested. Getting back to our priorities, and like we said, like showing them healthy priorities, like what's most important to you. Well, most important to me is Jesus, right? Like I'm a child of God, follower of Jesus. Like that's my number one most important thing, and I want to make sure they know that. Number two is my family. It's my wife, my kids, and then of course, like other relationships after that, friends, people matter most, and then down the line after that is when it comes to work and the things that we do. So making sure that that's communicated well says a ton about how much they matter and that you love them. Because a mistake I think way too many men make is that we say that's the priorities. Like we could all, if that's a written exam, we could all pass it and get an A. But in real life, when you're spending 70 plus hours a week on a regular basis at work, and you're not showing up to ball games and you're not at home and being present, you're not there for dinner or that family quality time, eventually like they're going to realize that your priorities are actually work or alone time or hobby or wherever else it is that you're spending
hmm
your time, and not actually family.
hmm
And man, I just like, if guys out there that are listening, like this may step on some toes, it does mine as well, but like I think way too often men will use the excuse that providing for their family is how they show love.
Yep.
And that's why they spend X amount of hours at work, and that shows how much they care. And really, that's just an excuse to not be present. Because I promise you, like, I did student ministry for years, and dude, I can't tell you the number of kids I sat with in tears because their dad was never around. A lot of those kids drove really nice cars and were provided for really well, and that stuff didn't matter. What mattered was they wanted their dad to be around. And
True.
so, got to communicate what your priorities are, and that's got to show up in real life.
Well said. And then when it comes to that, it starts when it comes to loving the family. It starts with your wife. So they got to see you loving your wife. They got to see you encouraging her. They got to see you showering her with compliments, date nights, serving her, whatever it takes, because then they will do that to her. They'll be serving her,
Hmm.
and then they'll know how to treat, their future wife. And
And
so,
again, and that communicates a priority.
mhm,
I want them to know, like, I love you so much, but I love her more, which means, like, we're going to always respect mom. Like, you don't talk to my wife that way. those
Yep.
sort of rules in the house. Because I mean, she's going to be around long after you guys are moved out and gone. Like we still got to have a marriage and a relationship together, and so models that. And it does. It shows them like that's setting the example for like how they're going to love their wife and how they're going to love other people if they get married. If they don't, then this still sets the example for how they're going to treat other women and the respect they show and the love that they treat them with. All of that we want to model it in our own relationships, and of course not just with your wife, but the next one we kind of had there was just the way that we love other people. And so the way we show them in serving strangers, and serving people at church, and just every day the way you treat people at the checkout or your waiter, like all those
Hmm.
things are the way that we love other people, and they're watching. Like kids are always watching.
Yep. There was a time when I was in the car with Jack. We were driving the truck down the road, and there was a lady. She was stuck on the side. She had a giant construction cone under the car, and I said, "Jack, we're gonna turn around. We're gonna drive back. We're gonna help her, and you're gonna help me do it." And so we got out. I had Jack get out with me. He crawled on his belly. He got the cone out. It was something simple that he could do, but he did it. He helped a stranger. She thanked him, and then we invited her to church. And I don't think she came, but it was awesome. But it was such a
Eh,
core memory for Jack because he's like, man, I'm a fifth grader at the time, and I am capable of helping people.
mm. Yeah, and he got to be a part of that, right? Like that's again something that sticks with him, and the likelihood then of him doing that in the future as he grows up, way higher now, just because of being able to experience that with his dad.
Right.
And that's true of so many of these things. Um, the next one we had is one we've already kind of mentioned, but discipline. Discipline is love. Now, so many of these things, like building core memories and doing, macaroni and cheese brackets, like so many things like that are fun and they feel good. And it's like, yes, like I love this. Discipline is the one that, like, sometimes love is hard. And
Yep.
so discipline is one of those. It's like, man, because I love you, I cannot allow you to behave this way. And we've spent, there's already an episode we did.
Hmm.
You can go back and find it. It was specifically about this. But we can't go through an episode about how to love our kids without talking about discipline. Like we have to
Yep.
discipline them if we actually care about
Yep. And then the next one is listening. Man, I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with the boys and my head is thinking about work. My head's thinking
them.
about, what am I going to do, tomorrow? What do I have to get ready for dinner? Instead of just sitting there and listening to the boys talk. Because if you're in a car ride, if you're sitting next to them on the couch, going for a walk, playing with them, you can learn so much about them just by listening to their conversations. You can figure out, how what their love language is. You can figure out what they
Hmm.
enjoy doing. You can figure out, all their favorite things just by listening and just by being there and being present.
Dude, I was just thinking about this. You said that just this week. We had a night that I'd been at work, Ethan had been at school, and then they had an after school thing, and then after that, I had a Bible study I was going to, and Michaela took the boys to a volleyball game, and so it was like all day we were just kind of like passing by and didn't really have a lot of time together. And so by the end of the night, like I'm putting Ethan to bed, and that's like, I mean, his time to, like, he just wants to talk. And it was just one of those moments, like, I was so tired, and I was like, "Man, I really just want you to go to sleep." But I was like, he wants to fill me in on his day. He wants to tell me about all these things. And so I was like, "Man, you just, you need to buckle up and just like stay up for a little bit longer, and we're gonna listen and hear about it and give him feedback." Because it's just so important, man, to
Yeah.
give them like so much of this. Like, I want them to hear this, I want them to hear this, and I want to say this. But like, man, as important as any of that, communicating love is like just being the person that listens to them.
Yep.
And in that, you just learn about them. You learn what's on their heart. You learn what has been exciting for them. You learn who their friends are, and you learn like what they're worried about, and all
Yep.
these different things. And man, that is like we're gonna kind of wrap up here in a minute with I'm talking about these five love languages, but like this is how you learn about the people in your life. You have to
Hmm.
listen to them, and man, it's so important because you want to be a student of your family. Like you want to be a
Hmm.
student of the people in your circle to learn like all of this stuff matters, but some of them matter specifically to that person more than the others. So that kind of leads us right into talking about the five love languages. I don't know if you're familiar with these or not. Typically, these are things people talk about like in a couple's relationship.
Gary Chapman.
Gary Chapman. Um, But these have been around for a long time. But these are, not just for a husband and wife, but in friendships, in families, and even with your kids. Like everyone, I think, has a love language, a way that you feel loved the most. And so, if you're not familiar with them, these are the five. There's words of affirmation. There's quality time, receiving gifts, physical touch, and acts of service. And so, again, all five of those are important, and all five probably make you feel loved. But if you think about yourself, and maybe you already know yours, some of these mean more to you than others do. Like some people receiving gifts is like, I mean, it goes straight to their heart. And other people, it's nice, but that's just, it's like,
Mhm.
well, whatever, they kind of move on. For them, words of affirmation may be the thing that like they keep that letter forever, right? But yeah, so for you, Taylor, what would you say? We'll start with us. What is your love language? Like, what makes Taylor feel loved the most?
I asked my wife that last night because LG and I were planning this, and he said, us guys, typically we don't like physical touch. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I asked Allison,
Well,
she's
don't
like, you're.
misquote me on that. I'll explain what I mean in a minute.
But she was like, oh, you're for sure physical touch. So Allison says I'm physical touch. But the other thing, when you just
Taylor's a
mentioned,
hugger.
I am a hugger. But the other thing is when you mentioned words of affirmation and keeping those letters forever, I do have a box that I keep encouraging letters in. So I think
Same.
I probably am words of affirmation as well.
Yeah.
So
So
you?
to what Taylor was saying, I said I think all men think they're physical touch.
That's
Um,
true. That's what you said.
because I think like you have this desire for sex, and you're like, well, yeah, physical touch is how I feel loved the most. And I think very often, not all the time, like a lot of guys are physical touch, but I think a lot of times we confuse a desire for sex with being a physical touch, like, being your love language, and that's not always true. You may have like a strong desire for sex, but it doesn't mean you want to hold hands all the time. It doesn't mean that you want to, have your arm around her or arm around you or, to always be touching like that sort of thing. And so for me, I'm not a physical touch person. My love language would probably be quality time, not necessarily even quantity time. Like it doesn't have to be like we spent, all day together, but quality time to me is very important. And words of affirmation as well. Those are probably my two main ones.
I
Um,
like that.
yeah. What about? Do you know Allison's? You should know Allison's.
Allison's is acts of service.
Okay.
So yeah, so she enjoys that. She enjoys doing things for other people. She enjoys having things done for her. And then the boys, Jack is the same, acts of service.
Mm-hmm.
He loves it when we make him mac and cheese and bring him chocolate milk, things like
That a
that.
boy.
And then Eli, we think is, he's somewhere between quality time and gifts. So what about your crew?
Yeah, man, I would say so. Michaela's is quality time as well, and hers probably is physical touch. Like
Yeah.
she, wants to all the time be holding hands or touching, like arm around her, that sort of stuff. She loves that. Feels very loved and cared about in that way. Um, the boys, I would say Ethan is also he is physical touch, man. That kid always wants to be on you, like touching and even like wrestling, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like I all the time, like, buddy, you've got to give people space. Um, but yeah, he loves his physical touch. And then Malachi, it's hard. I think younger kids, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is. I don't think he's a physical touch person. He may be a little bit more like me. I think words of affirmation are a big one for him. Like, when
Yeah.
we do, like, we go to Holiday World and I'm trying to coax him into like doing more stuff. And so, like, he'll go down the slide and I'm like, buddy, that was amazing. Like, you are so brave. And he like puffs his chest out and he goes, yeah, dad, I'm so brave. So brave. Like, those words really stick with him. And
I love
so
it.
I think that might be his. Um, but yeah, what's important though, and again, like they need all of these, like
Mhm.
and beyond that, like all the stuff that we've talked about, they need those. But when you learn what their specific thing is, like that for Jack, man, it's like it's great to take him out and you know get him a new pair of shoes or something, but like he wants acts of service. Eli, the shoes might be something he's like, man, I'm gonna wear these forever
Oh
and
yeah.
never forget that dad got me these.
That's right.
But for Jack, it's gonna be acts of service, right? It's like doing things for him, it's helping him with something. That just means so much more. And so, I mean, you just double your impact. And to learn those things, though, like you do have to listen. You've got to
Mhm.
pay attention to them, and you have to again just be a student of your family. And so, yeah, I would love to hear guys out there. Moms out there too, if you're listening in, would love to hear, like, tell us the ways that you express love in your family. Maybe what your love language is, your family, if you're familiar with them, if you know them, if you're a student of them. What are ways that you do that? What are ways that you show, acts of service or gifts or different things like that? Yeah, share those with us, and yeah, let us know.